Okay guys, welcome to another shop update. Maybe you can tell from this video clip, but I'm shooting this with a new camera. But we'll get into that later and I'll describe that to you. Anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a clip of the trailer and discuss the ride that I'm getting with it after I've installed the shocks, which were completed on the last shop update. So let's cut here and we'll go to that clip. Okay, I'm just going to shoot a little clip of the trailer. My last shop update, April 7th. I had finished putting the shocks on, told you I had to make a haul on it with it. Now, I didn't go over any concrete roads that had expansion joints on it, but let me tell you, when I hit bumps, it totally feels differently than it did when it didn't have shocks on it. Before, when I hit bumps with no shocks on it, it was like a hard jar when it transferred back to the truck. When the truck will go over a bump, then the trailer would go over a bump. When the trailer hit that bump, it would transfer back to the truck, and it was like a hard jar. That isn't the case anymore. It's mellower. You can feel the bump, but it's not like a hard, sharp jar. It's a mellow type of, you feel the trailer hit it and it kind of is more mellow, or not as pronounced of a hit anymore. So maybe it has worked, but again, I haven't gone over concrete highways yet to see if that is if I'm gonna still get that the repetitive motion of the expansion joints on it, where you get that harmonic effect. I'm not sure if this is going to help that or not help it. I didn't think it would do anything to begin with, but it has helped. It's helped with the way that the trailer hits those things. I'm not really, if this is in fact the case, but again, this is early. It was only 10 miles, the haul. So I had 10 miles there loaded, and then 10 miles back unloaded. So it's not really a good judgment on it, but you know, if it does in fact turn out the way that I think it may be after driving it with the shocks on it, I'm not sure why they don't do it to begin with, put shocks on them. But anyways, I'll bring you back about it. And yeah, we're back. So as you can see, there was a difference in the ride quality of the trailer after I got it. Now, I have not gone over any more concrete expansion joints, concrete roads with the expansion joints to get that harmonic effect, to see if it's subdued that at all, putting the shocks on. But let's cut here. We'll go to some other things and I'll bring you back about the rest of it. Here's a drain plug out of the side of the transmission out of the International. Now I've got a little it's just powdery. As you can see, there's well, wait a minute, there is one chunk. I'm just going to stick this brief clip in here. After giving some thought to that plug, and it was not the drain plug, it was the fill plug, and seeing all of that debris and that chunk of metal on the fill plug, I am probably going to drain this transmission now Actually, probably what I'm going to do is, because that PTO comes off of the bottom of it, the drain is on the bottom of the transmission, the drain plug. I do not remember seeing a drain plug in the PTO, so any debris, oils, bad oil and stuff like that that could be in there could be entrapped in that PTO if I just drained the fluid out of the transmission. So what I'm thinking about doing is getting a cover plate for that PTO to put back in place of it, and taking it off and draining the oil out that way, taking that PTO off, and let me see what's going on inside of there. I think it's kind of unusual to have a chunk and all of that debris up on the fill plug of the transmission. So what I'm going to do is order it. It's going to add some time to getting this thing back in service, but it's better to be done now and know that it's good, or if there's an issue, to get it fixed now. So I'll bring you back to the original clip. But the oil was right up to the fill plug, and it was clean, very clean, not burnt smelling at all. Again, Eaton Fuller's recommended change on this oil is $500,000 for highway use, $200,000 for off-highway use. Now, this truck was used for both on and off highway use, so probably at $200,000 I'm going to change it. Just so I am a little concerned. I'm going to wash that piece up and see what it looks like. I'm a little concerned about that. I'm also puzzled about the PTO. PTO comes off the bottom of the transmission, and I've got to assume that when you put that PTO on, you have to add fluid, because I've got to assume I don't see any fill or drain plugs on the PTO, but I've got to assume that the oil from the transmission is lubricating the PTO too. But yet I have that open port on the back of that PTO, and nothing is coming out of it. So I'm still trying to investigate that. I've got the serial number. There's only one number on it. I've got the manufacturer's tag on that PTO, and there's only one number. Whether that number is a combination model and serial number, I'm not really sure until I start investigating it. But let me investigate it, and I'll let you know what's going on with that. So what I'm doing is relocating this intake filter for the air compressor. This is the old air compressor out of my truck. I'm relocating this intake filter up to underneath the back seat. So there is no potential to get moisture in it that way. Kind of Firestone's contention was that it drew moisture in through the old filter, and the salt or the chemicals that cause that corrosion inside of it. Now, this is a new filter, and what I'm going to do is try and find what I did with the old filter. This is a new filter, so outside it has a piece of foam rubber that it has to draw through. So that's probably about an inch thick, 3/4 of an inch to an inch thick. And then inside of it, it has this material. And let me see if I can pull that out. But my contention is would it pulled moisture through into the compressor? When I took that line apart, there was no indication of moisture or corrosion You know, in the Northeast, we get the white powdery stuff from salt, so there was no indication of that in the line. But let me see what this white filtery stuff is. Then let me see if I can find that old filter and pull that apart and see if there's any residue on it. I'm not sure what I did with the damn thing. But anyways, I'll bring you back and I'll show you how I put it up under there. And here's that white filter that I showed you in the base of that thing. Again, another probably 3/8 of an inch thick. Yeah. Let me see if I can find that old filter. I don't want to pass judgment on it, but I can't see really how that corrosion, as you can see that corrosion inside of there, how it got through. My thought is maybe this thing leaks somehow. But anyways, let me bring you back. So here is that thing that comes up through underneath the seat, the intake for that pump. I poked it up through an existing spot in there from underneath. I've got to go down and put some tape over. I lost the plug. I don't know what happened to the plug. I was trying to drill through. There's a plug in the bottom of the body panel. And I was trying to drill through it and I pushed it up in and I went to grab it and it went back into underneath the undercarriage. And I can't find it. I put a light up there and I put a mirror up there to see if I can find it. But anyways, there is that intake for the air pump. Comes up underneath the seat, so no moisture should ever get into it. Okay, so here I found it, and here is the old filter. That's the inside. Now, it's not whitish. That's like dusty dirt. And I'm looking at the foam rubber one. That would be the outside where the 4 holes in the intake are. And that's the inside, which is a lot cleaner than the outside. And here is that inner thing, which again is dirty. I mean, it looks like dust dirt, but here is a kicker. That is the inside of it. So this is where the air would go down through after it's gone through the filters. And as you can see, that thing is clean, and there is no indication of salt or they use calcium chloride sometimes, but no indication of that in this intake filter. So I'm going to take a picture of this stuff and send it to Firestone and just show them what I kind of found. Okay, as you can see, I've got the International back in the shop again. There's some things that I want to do to it or start doing to it, and we'll go through a little bit of a list, but let me just tell you one thing. In a previous clip, I showed you the fill plug for the transmission. What I wanted to do is pull that fill plug off of there and just get a general idea. Make sure that the level of the transmission fluid was good, and make sure kind of from being able to see it what the condition of that transmission fluid was in. Again, the truck only has 180,000 miles on it, and over the road type of application, that transmission fluid should be good for 500,000 miles before they recommend changing it. But anyways, let's move on. I pulled that plug off, and then I told you that I didn't really understand the PTO thing. Well, there's 2 parts of the PTO. There's a drive unit that attaches to the bottom of the transmission, and I'll take some pictures of it and kind of throw it in here. There's a part that attaches to the bottom of the transmission, and the transmission fluid does go down into that because it's an open, like maybe a 4x6 opening in the bottom of the transmission that this thing bolts to, and the gears from the PTO drive, let me call it a drive because that's exactly what it is, a PTO drive. The gears from that PTO drive stick up and mesh with the gears in the transmission to actually power that PTO drive. So that PTO drive is just that, a PTO drive. Then there are things that you can add to that PTO drive, like a hydraulic pump, an air compressor, whatever you want to drive off of it. You can add to that as a second unit. So the transmission fluid out of the Eaton Fuller goes down into the PTO drive. So you have to, if you added this PTO drive to the transmission, you would have to subsequently add more fluid to the transmission to accommodate the fluid that goes down into the PTO drive. But from the PTO drive out, there's an output shaft that comes out of the PTO that other things adapt to. That is sealed. So that opening that I had showed you previously, and again, I'll throw a pick up here of it, is sealed off from the transmission through the PTO drive. There's a seal on the output shaft of the PTO drive that seals that fluid from not leaking out. So my concern about that port being open was not a concern. I'm not sure how that secondary drive is lubricated, but that's not an issue because it's off now and that port is open. Now I do want to seal it up just for the sake of sealing it up. I don't want this thing open. But anyways, that's kind of the explanation on that. Some of the things that I want to do, there's a bunch of things that I have to do to this truck before I can put it on the road. First of all, the windshield is cracked across the driver, in front of the driver's thing, and over the sweep of the wiper blades, and it's more than, like, I think you're allowed a 2-inch crack. Anything over that, the windshield has to be replaced, or if it passes over the area of the windshield wiper sweep, is the other thing on it. I don't quote me on that, double check it, but that's kind of what my memory of that thing goes. So that has to be done. I'm going to have to bite the bullet and buy a new fan clutch. The fan clutch in this thing, I can't get it apart. So I'm going to have to buy a new fan clutch for it. That's got to be done. I'm going to hook up those lights. There's I have a light, a trouble light on the ABS system. Now, I don't have a scan tool for large trucks, but somebody has told me that they're not even sure a scan tool will pick up the issue with the ABS. They said, well, it's probably just a ABS sensor on one of the wheels. Okay, how do I determine that? How do I figure out which wheel it is? So that has got to be looked into, investigated, and everything else. I think it's a requirement. I know it's a requirement on trailers. I'm not really sure if it's a requirement on trucks. There has to be 3 lights in the back that identify it as a trailer or a truck. Again, I'm not sure if this rule it's a DOT regulation. I'm not sure if that applies to trucks or not. sometimes the DOT regulations there's so many and so complex, it's hard to figure out sometimes. Sometimes you're just better off adding it if there's a question about it. But there has to be three red lights in a row. You'll see them on semi-trailers. Sometimes they're at the top, sometimes they're down low. I'm probably going to just add 3 of the button lights in a row. So maybe one will be centered here, here, and here. I'll have to figure out if there's a guideline for it, but I want to do that because when I get this thing inspected, I don't want it to be failing because I didn't add the proper lighting on it. So there's a couple of tires that should be replaced before I try and even get it inspected. We've talked about the front tires. Yeah, it's these. Actually, I think they're still legal, but I'll double check that. The front tires we've talked about before, and people have noticed that there's a wear pattern on the outside edge of it. They're legal. Again, when I bought this truck, it was bought from an auction. I picked it up in Colorado, but it was bought from an auction. I don't know whether these tires that are on this truck are the original tires. So that scuff pattern or that wear pattern on the outside of it, I'm not sure relates to this truck. What I want to do is get the thing on the road and kind of determine it. It's going to be used for local hauls to begin with, but what I'll do is I'll monitor the tire wear to see if that wear pattern was caused by this truck or what's going on with it. So if it needs to be aligned, the toe in or toe out adjusted, I can do that after I figure out what's going on with the front end, how the tires are wearing or not wearing. Again, these tires very possibly could have been off of another vehicle. Anyways, so those are the things that I've got to get done before I can get this thing on the road. Yeah, that and how I want to register this thing. It needs to be determined before I get it on the road. But anyways, I hope that I had addressed any of the issues that I had brought up before with that transmission plug in the PTO. Yeah, I didn't really fully understand PTOs until I started investigating the PTO on this thing, only to find out that there's like a PTO drive and then there's accessories that come off of that PTO drive that you want. So like if I wanted a hydraulic pump or if I wanted a maybe another shaft to drive something with, yeah, that would be 2 different accessories. I think there's also an air compressor that you can buy or can get that attaches to that PTO drive if you wanted subsequent air other than the air that's provided in the truck. So I have a better understanding of that now, and if any of you didn't have an understanding, hopefully that'll bring it to light. I'll bring you back. Okay, so we're going to go off topic here for a little while. Some of the things that I do, kind of break up the day. You know, it's nice to do things that are out of the ordinary or things that you don't do very often. So one of the things that my grandson, Matt, who helped me with the transmission behind me, and I helped him with his clutch and stuff like that. is into amateur radio. And so this past weekend, he had found a very good deal on some radio antennas and towers and stuff like that. And it was down in central New York, down by Seneca Lake. Seneca Lake is one of the Finger Lakes. There's Finger Lakes they call them Finger Lakes in New York State. If you look at a map, they actually look like fingers. Seneca is one of them. It's a very extraordinary lake to begin with, because it's very deep, extremely deep. It's one of the deepest freshwater lakes in the world. But anyways, we went down there, and this place was on a hill right beside the lake, and nice day, very good view. But anyways, I'm gonna throw some pics. So there was an antenna tower, and there's some pics of him up on it, some pics of views of the place from there. And I'm also going to throw in, I told you this was to regress here a little bit, I was raised, Seneca Lake, one end of Seneca Lake is Geneva, that's the northern end. The southern end of the lake is Watkins Glen. And anybody that's into auto racing probably knows about Watkins Glen. Watkins Glen used to be the Grand Prix of the United States, was held there. But I was raised probably 10 miles away from Watkins Glen racetrack also. I used to go on the racetrack all the time because actually part of it was a public road. They would gate off the rest of the racetrack, and part of the racetrack was actually a public road. Of course, the early Watkins Glen, the Grand Prix was held through the streets of Watkins Glen, but a bunch of people got killed during that, so they actually built a racetrack up on the top of the hill. But anyways, again, I regress. So I kind of knew that area. I told you that Seneca Lake is a deep lake. I'm going to throw another pick in there, and there's a derrick out in the middle of the lake, a big derrick. When I was a kid, we went on a boat, and a bunch of us kids went on a boat, and we didn't know what the derrick was, so we climbed onto it. Got off, climbed onto it. Of course, there was no trespassing signs on the thing, and it was all fenced off and everything, but we still got up on it anyways. But the next thing we know, we're in military police custody. It turned out that derrick, which is still there, I'm not sure if they use it for the same thing, they would submerge the nose cones off of submarines down there and test sonar units on it. But we had no idea. It was just a derrick in the lake to us. Couldn't see anything because, again, the nose cones are submerged 700 to 900 feet below the derrick anyway. So, yeah. But anyways, it was a great day for us. We got these the towers down, the antennas and stuff like that. And it gave me a chance to put the trailer on the truck and get some mileage in it, just kind of see what that transmission temperature was. And the transmission temperature on the way out there, which was fairly early in the morning, not real early in the morning, but fairly early in the morning, averaged about 160 degrees, towing a trailer. And then on the way back, which was into a very brisk headwind at 70 miles an hour, with some stuff on the trailer. There wasn't a lot of weight on the trailer, probably not more than 500 pounds. It got up to 190, just over, a little over 190 degrees. So that's going to bring me up to another topic. I went on the internet to kind of research transmission temperatures for different oils and stuff like that. And I keep seeing all of these things, but again, there's as much disinformation on the internet as there is good information. So I didn't know, some of the figures that I saw averaged around, you shouldn't go much above 225. If you go up to 250, you should pull over and let the transmission cool down, stuff like that. But it never said anything about being synthetic oil or it's standard petroleum oil. Never mentioned anything like that. So I called up AMSOIL, the maker of the lubricant that I put in the transmission, and I asked them about it. Well, we had a little conversation, me and this tech guy, and I should have realized this, but I told him what I had, a G56 transmission in a Ram, and that I had put their oil in it, and I wanted to know a safe working temperature and a maximum extreme temperature on the oil. He says to me, "You put the wrong oil in that transmission. It should have been ATF." And I says, "Yeah, I know." But Mercedes-Benz makes that transmission, and they recommend that you put gear oil in it. And he says, "Yeah, but we have to go off of what Chrysler says, and Chrysler's recommendations supersedes what Mercedes says. So we have to say that ATF." He didn't say we have to say. He said our recommendation is ATF fluid for it. But he did give me the temperatures of that oil. He says you can run it at 260 degrees is an average hauling temperature for it, would be okay. But he says never go above 300 degrees. Now, that seems a little high to me based on what I saw on the internet. But again, you don't know what they're talking about on the internet. You don't know who's talking about it to begin with. And really, they don't talk about whether it's synthetic or standard petroleum-based gear oil. The other thing is the conversations on the internet or the information on the internet kind of intertwines itself between ATF and gear oil. Sometimes you'll be reading an article only to figure out that they're talking about ATF and not gear oil. But anyways, I just kind of thought I'd throw that in there. It was a cool day with my grandson taking those towers down, taking the antennas down. But anyways, that's going to do it for this shop update, guys. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe.